It all started with the silence, a suffocating, deafening silence that filled our home like a poison seeping into every corner of my life. My husband, once a man I thought would stand by me through thick and thin, had become a stranger. His indifference was like a knife slowly carving away at my soul. He didn't remember my birthday, forgot important meetings I had, and acted as if I were just another piece of furniture in the house. The worst part? He didn't even care to hide it anymore. I tried, oh, how I tried, to fix what was broken between us. I cooked his favorite meals, left little notes for him, and even planned surprise dates, hoping to reignite the spark we once shared. But every attempt was met with cold rejection. One evening, desperate to feel close to him again, I asked if I could join him on an upcoming business trip. "You think you can actually help with anything?" He sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Don't bother coming. You'll only get in the way." Those words hit me harder than any slap ever could. They echoed in my mind long after he walked out of the room, leaving me alone in the dim light of the kitchen. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. Was I not good enough? Did I do something to deserve this treatment? The loneliness became unbearable, like a storm raging inside me, threatening to consume everything I held dear. I felt trapped, drowning in a sea of despair, with no lifeline in sight. The silence between us had grown unbearable, but the thought of being left alone in that cold, empty house while he went on yet another business trip was even more suffocating. I couldn't face it. Another week of staring at the same walls, drowning in memories of what we once were, and the bitter reality of what we had become. Desperation clawed at my chest as I approached him one last time, pleading with everything I had. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling like a fragile thread about to snap. "Let me come with you this time. I can't bear to be here by myself anymore." He turned to look at me, his eyes devoid of warmth or recognition, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience standing in his way. "You think you're helping?" He scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. "Your presence will only distract me from work. You'll get in the way, just like always." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. How could he say such things so casually, as though my very existence was a burden? But before I could retreat into the safety of silence, something inside me snapped. Summoning every ounce of courage, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why do you never make time for me? Why am I always pushed aside? For a moment, there was nothing but silence, a heavy, oppressive void that seemed to stretch endlessly. Then, without missing a beat, he delivered the final blow. "Don't you understand?" he said, his lips curling into a sneer. "I'm tired of dealing with you every single day." The room spun around me as those cruel words sliced through my heart like a razor-sharp blade. My knees buckled under the weight of his indifference, and I found myself clutching the edge of the table for support. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the sheer cruelty behind it, the callousness that made me feel smaller than ever before. That night, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, replaying his words over and over in my mind. Each repetition felt like salt being rubbed into an open wound. Was this really how he saw me? As someone who drained his energy, who deserved nothing but contempt? I wanted to scream, to cry, to break free from the invisible chains binding me to this toxic relationship. Yet deep down, I knew the truth. I was trapped, not by locks or bars, but by fear and uncertainty. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of losing the remnants of the life I had built. And so I stayed, silently enduring the pain until fate intervened and offered me a lifeline in the most unexpected form. The days following my husband's cruel dismissal were a blur of tears and restless nights. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, wandering through the empty halls of our home, searching for something, anything, that could make me feel alive again. That was when Chris entered my world, not with a storm, but with a quiet, steady presence that began to chip away at the fortress of pain I had built around myself. He was different from anyone else in my life. Every time he picked me up, he greeted me with a smile so warm it seemed to melt the frost on my heart. His eyes held a gentleness that spoke volumes, and his words carried an authenticity I hadn't encountered in years. One evening, as we drove home under the soft glow of streetlights, Chris broke the silence in a way that took my breath away. "A woman as beautiful as you doesn't deserve to be treated poorly," he said, his voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "Your husband doesn't know how to cherish you, but I do." The car seemed to grow smaller as his words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. My first instinct was to recoil, to dismiss his confession as inappropriate or reckless. After all, he was just my driver. A man who worked for us, someone whose place in my life should have been strictly professional. But deep down, I couldn't deny the truth in what he said. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a burden or an inconvenience, but as a person worthy of love and admiration. At first, I tried to keep him at arm's length, afraid of crossing boundaries I wasn't ready to confront. Yet no matter how hard I resisted, Chris continued to show kindness in ways that were impossible to ignore. He remembered small details about me. The way I liked my coffee, the fact that roses were my favorite flower, and he made sure to incorporate them into our interactions. Once, he even brought me a single red rose, saying simply, "You deserve beauty in your life, ma'am." It was such a simple gesture, yet it left me fighting back tears. No one, not even my own husband, had ever shown me such thoughtfulness. As weeks passed, I found myself looking forward to seeing Chris, to hearing his calming voice and sharing fleeting moments of connection during our drives. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to let my guard down. There was something profoundly comforting about being around someone who genuinely cared, who didn't see me as a problem to solve or a weight to carry. With Chris, I felt like I could breathe again. For the first time in years, the fragile illusion of our marriage shattered in an instant, like glass exploding under unbearable pressure. It was late at night when the storm hit. A storm that had been brewing for months, perhaps even years, but finally erupted with a ferocity neither of us could have anticipated. My husband, who had spent so many nights dismissing me as irrelevant, stumbled upon something he wasn't prepared to face. A single text message from Chris, innocent enough on its own, yet damning in context, was all it took to unleash the chaos we had both been avoiding. He found it by accident, scrolling through my phone while I was in the shower. The screen lit up with words that sealed my fate. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. You deserve so much more than what he's given you." The message was unsigned, but there was no mistaking the intimacy behind it. His hands trembled as he read it, his face contorted with rage. By the time I emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel and oblivious to the disaster awaiting me, he was already pacing the room like a caged animal. "What is this?" he bellowed, shoving my phone into my chest so hard I staggered backward. "Who is he? Who is giving you what I supposedly haven't?" His voice cracked under the weight of his fury, each word laced with venom. For a moment I froze, caught off guard by the intensity of his reaction, but then something inside me shifted. Instead of shrinking back, I straightened my spine, meeting his glare with a steely gaze of my own. You want to know the truth? I shot back, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Fine. Yes, someone has been treating me the way I should have been treated all along. Someone who listens, who cares, who actually sees me as a human being, not just another item on your list of things to ignore. His eyes widened in disbelief, but before he could respond, his anger boiled over. With a roar, he slammed his fist onto the dresser, sending a vase crashing to the floor. Shards of ceramic scattered across the carpet, glinting ominously in the dim light. "Don't you dare justify this!" he screamed, spit flying from his lips. "You're the one sneaking around behind my back. You're the traitor here." For a split second, I felt fear flicker in my chest. This was not the man I married. This was a stranger, consumed by jealousy and hatred. But the fear quickly gave way to resolve. How dare he accuse me of betrayal after everything he had done, or rather, failed to do? Summoning every ounce of courage, I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. "Open your eyes," I shouted, jabbing a finger toward him. "You pushed me away long before Chris ever came into the picture. You treated me like I was invisible, like my feelings didn't matter. Did you really think I'd stay silent forever? Did you honestly believe I wouldn't find someone who values me?" His response was immediate and brutal. He lunged forward, grabbing a lamp from the bedside table and hurling it against the wall. The crash echoed through the house, followed by an eerie silence. For a moment, we stood there, locked in a battle of wills. His face flushed with rage, mine etched with determination. Then, slowly, deliberately, I spoke again. "This isn't about Chris," I said, my tone softer now but no less resolute. "This is about us, or rather, the lack of it. We stopped being a couple a long time ago. All that's left is resentment and lies." He stared at me, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists. And then, with a final surge of fury, he kicked over a chair, sending it skidding across the floor. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his voice low and menacing. "Mark my words." But I didn't flinch. Standing amidst the wreckage of our shared life, I realized something profound. I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, I knew I couldn't go back to living like this. The chapter of my life with him was closing, whether he liked it or not. The aftermath of the explosive argument left the house in shambles, both physically and emotionally. The air was thick with tension, a suffocating weight that pressed down on us as we sat across from each other at the dining table. For the first time in years, there was no pretense of civility, just raw, unfiltered anger and pain. My husband, his face still flushed with rage, leaned forward and began speaking in clipped tones. "If we're doing this," he said, his voice cold and calculating, "then I get the house, the car, and most of the savings. You think I'll let you walk away with everything?" I stared at him, my pulse pounding in my ears, but I refused to let his words rattle me. This wasn't just about material possessions. It was about justice, dignity, and reclaiming the life he had tried to strip away from me. Summoning every ounce of resolve, I met his gaze head-on. "We split everything equally," I declared, my voice steady and unwavering. "That's my right, and don't even think about taking more than your share." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might explode again. Instead, he sneered, leaning back in his chair with an air of superiority. "You deserve half?" He spat, his tone dripping with disdain. "After all the lies, after flaunting yourself around with that driver, you have the audacity to demand anything? You're nothing but a cheating woman who seduced someone beneath her station. Each word felt like a slap, designed to cut me down and remind me of my place, or rather, the place he thought I belonged. But instead of shrinking under his verbal assault, I felt a surge of clarity. This man, who had spent years belittling me, now stood exposed for what he truly was: bitter, selfish, and desperate to maintain control. With a calmness that surprised even myself, I replied, "Call me whatever you want. It doesn't change the fact that I chose survival over suffering. Living with you is hell, and if finding happiness with Chris makes me damaged goods in your eyes, so be it." The room fell silent, save for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. His jaw tightened, and I could see the frustration simmering beneath his composed exterior. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but stopped short, as if realizing his attempts to demean me were futile. Finally, he muttered under his breath, "Fine. Split it however you want. But mark my words, you'll regret this." As he stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The decision to leave wasn't made lightly. It came after years of enduring neglect, betrayal, and emotional abuse. Yet here I was, standing firm in my choice, ready to build a future free from the chains of our toxic past. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the driveway as I stepped out of the house for the last time, my suitcase in hand and heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Chris was waiting for me outside, leaning against his sleek black car, his expression a blend of anticipation and concern. As I approached, he opened the door for me, his eyes searching mine for any sign of hesitation. But there was none. I slid into the passenger seat, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders as the engine roared to life. "Chris," I said before he could pull away, my voice firm but tinged with vulnerability. "Don't call me ma'am anymore." He turned to look at me, surprise flickering across his face before it softened into understanding. "Okay," he replied simply, nodding. That small exchange marked the beginning of something new, a shift from the suffocating formality of my past life to a future built on equality and mutual respect. The drive to the restaurant was quiet but charged with tension. Every mile we covered seemed to stretch the distance between me and the life I had left behind. Finally, Chris broke the silence, his tone cautious yet earnest. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, glancing at me briefly before returning his focus to the road. "I don't want you to regret anything later." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. For a moment I hesitated, not because I doubted my decision, but because I realized how much trust he was placing in me. Then, with a soft smile that carried more conviction than I thought possible, I answered, "I've waited too long for this moment." When we arrived at the restaurant, the atmosphere was warm and intimate, bathed in the flickering light of candles scattered across the tables. We sat facing each other, the world outside fading into a distant blur. Looking into Chris's eyes, I felt a surge of clarity wash over me. "I want to start over," I began, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. No more pain, no more tears, just a fresh beginning. Chris reached across the table, taking my hand in his. His touch was gentle but deliberate, grounding me in the present. "You'll never have to cry again if I can help it," he vowed, his gaze unwavering. "I promise to cherish you every single day." His words weren't just promises. They were a lifeline, pulling me further away from the darkness I had endured for so long. Yet even in this moment of hope, I couldn't shake the lingering uncertainty. What lay ahead was unknown, fraught with challenges neither of us could foresee. But as I looked around the softly lit room, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever came next, I would face it head on, armed with the strength I'd found within myself and the love that Chris now offered without reservation. The evening had started perfectly. A quiet ambiance, candlelight casting soft shadows on the table, and the promise of a new beginning with Chris. But just as we began to relax into the moment, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The door to the restaurant swung open and a familiar figure strode in, his presence commanding yet unsettling. It was Daniel, my former colleague, the same man who had once pursued me relentlessly but was met with rejection. His eyes locked onto mine and a sly smile spread across his face as he approached our table. "Well, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "I never thought you'd trade up for a driver when someone like me was right there waiting." His words hung in the air, sharp and cutting, designed to provoke and humiliate. I felt my stomach churn, not from fear, but from anger at his audacity to intrude on this intimate moment. Before I could respond, Chris stood up, his posture firm and protective. "She chose me because I know how to appreciate her," Chris said, his tone calm but laced with steel. "You have no business interfering in her life, or ours." Daniel's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered, stepping closer as if trying to assert dominance. "Appreciate her?" Daniel shot back, his voice rising. "What can a man like you offer her? Stability, security, or just another fleeting escape from reality?" The tension crackled between them, palpable enough to make the nearby diners glance over curiously. My heart pounded, but I refused to let Daniel's provocations shake me. Summoning every ounce of strength, I rose to my feet, standing beside Chris. "Leave the past where it belongs," I said firmly, my voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "I've made my choice, and that choice is Chris. You don't get to question it or me." For a moment, Daniel stared at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving behind only the faint echo of his footsteps. As we sat back down, Chris took my hand, his grip reassuring. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, exhaling deeply. "More than okay," I replied, squeezing his hand. "This is my future now. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.